You're listening to Protecting What Matters by the Ohio Department of Commerce. Commerce is Ohio's chief regulator, and we play a vital role in keeping you safe by protecting your property, your money, and some of the products you use every day. This is designed to bring awareness to important issues and help educate consumers and businesses. Join us as we chat with trusted industry experts focused on providing you with the tools you need to help you protect what matters most in your life.
We all can play an active role in keeping our community safe just by having that awareness of how we can be safe, why we need to be safe, and when we need to take these precautions. And so therefore, let's help our fire departments here in Ohio by doing our part in learning about this stuff and implementing it and being safe.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Protecting What Matters. I'm your host, Andy Ellinger, and today we're going to discuss the outdoor fire safety and Ohio's statewide burn ban. Joining me today is Aaron Kloss, the Program Administrator for Ohio Department of Natural Resource Division of Forestry. How are you today, Aaron?
Just fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on here.
Each season, one of our most engaged social media posts surrounds the burn ban. Specifically, the burn ban spelled out in Ohio Revised Code 1503.18, which prohibits most open burning in unincorporated areas during the months of March, April, May, October, and November between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. I mean, we get a lot of pushback from the public on that. So, Aaron, can you tell us why we have a burn ban?
Absolutely. Well, first, I think it's great that social media post gets so much traction, and we're really happy at Division of Forestry that people are paying attention to that and looking at that, because the reason why that burn ban is in place is for community safety. And so we really appreciate all your listeners actually looking at that and paying attention to it, because I think that's great. So the 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. burn ban in the spring and the fall in Ohio is nothing new. It's been in Ohio Revised Code since 1988, so it's not new. It's been around for a long period of time. And the reason it's in there is because in the spring, before vegetation has greened up, there's abundant dry fuel that's available to burn, so that's when we have a lot of wildfire occurrence. And then again in the fall, after the leaves fall, and start to go into dormancy, you have a lot of vegetation that's available to burn at that point in time. And so that's why we have the burn ban in the spring and in the fall.
So because I didn't rake my leaves in the fall when my wife told me to, that's part of the reason, because those are still there in the spring and they could be combustion.
Absolutely. So sometimes instead of watching the football game, plan on going outside and doing some yard work. I think that's a good thing to do.
Okay, so you're explaining why the months. Well, why is it the time frame? What is the deal with 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.?
So during 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., that's during the daytime. And so generally speaking, in the daytime we have the warmest temperatures, the lowest relative humidity, so that's the driest conditions. And generally we have, depending on whatever the current weather pattern is, we got some gusty winds going. And so when we have situations where we have warm, dry, windy days, either in the spring or in the fall, those environmental conditions are what leads to a higher probability of escaped fires that lead to wildfires. So that's why the daytime hours are involved in that burn ban.
So we're being cautious because I know you and us at the state fire marshal, we're about preventing fires. we don't want fires getting out of control. So I think you're saying that this is a cautious time period and that we're focused on. So it's not just like you can safely start a fire at 5:59, but at 6:01, it's okay, or the other way around, I'm sorry. At 5:59, it's bad. At 6:01, it's okay. It's just we're trying to find a happy medium in the safest conditions.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. I mean, depending on whatever the current weather conditions are, we could have, on a wet, cold, damp day in the spring and the fall, conditions probably aren't as conducive to fire spread. But and on the flip side, like you just pointed out, it could be 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, and we could still have really elevated fire conditions. But administratively, the goal is to make a law that's easy for the public to understand and easy for the public to follow, and therefore that's why we identified that time frame in those months, because generally speaking, Not in all situations, but generally speaking, that's when environmental conditions can lead to a fire getting away and causing injuries or property damage or unwanted, type of effects.
Yeah, and we are seeing some of that. Does this differ from or supersede the state's open burning laws, restrictions that are maybe inside city village limits?
Well, here's the important thing for people to understand. So the Ohio Revised Code 1503.18, the 6A to 6P burn ban in the spring and the fall, that only covers unincorporated areas in Ohio. So that's mainly the rural areas and in the townships. So villages and towns and cities are generally incorporated, and so therefore that 6A to 6P burn ban as written in the code doesn't apply. However, villages and municipalities have the ability to adopt and reflect that same burn ban, or they can make different rules. So the important thing for people to know is they need to understand if they live in an unincorporated area or if they live in an incorporated area, and if they live within incorporated areas, they should really contact their fire department or their village council or local leadership to try to figure out what the rules are.
Now, can they? Is that the floor? Like it can't be any more liberal than those. It has to be at least adopting the open burn, but they can't be more restrictive. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand the question, and I would definitely defer to individuals checking with their local villages and so forth, just to be
sure,
have 100% clarity on what they're dealing with and what they need to follow.
Aren't there certain materials that are prohibited from ever being burned, no matter what the time of day or the month of the year?
Yeah, that's true, and that's a good point, because the 6A to 6P burn ban in unincorporated areas, that's under the authority of the Ohio Division of Forestry and Ohio Revised Code. Now, the Ohio EPA has another set of open burning rules, and the Ohio EPA is concerned mainly with what you just discussed, materials that you can and cannot burn. So the Ohio EPA has a whole list of materials which would include that cannot be burned at any point in time, which would include petroleum-based substances, food waste, dead animals, things like that. A whole and comprehensive list is on the Ohio EPA open burning website, so people should go there and check that out.
So not a good way to get rid of your tires.
Correct. Yeah.
Not a good way to do that.
So whenever our agency gets questions about open burning, we always provide as much information as the caller or the requester needs for the forestry burn ban rules, and we also direct them to check out the Ohio EPA laws, because our agency and the EPA, what we're trying to do is we're trying to increase safety together, and so therefore we refer back and forth to each other, because we each have different rules and laws that everybody needs to know about.
Yeah, I like the idea that there could be exceptions in your area. There could be different rules, and the best place to start, I guess, is locally and to find out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's correct. But also taking in mind that there are EPA rules as well as the revised code.
Absolutely, and something that's really nice about the Ohio Revised Code 1503.18, the 6A to 6P burn ban, is it's really easy to read in Ohio Revised Code. There's not a tremendous amount of legal jargon. I can read it and understand it, which means that the vast majority of the public can do the same also. And so there's 5 different sections of the Revised Code. One of them speaks to the 6A to 6P burn ban. Okay, and then another section talks about individuals having that kindle a fire, even if it's outside of restricted hours, have the responsibility to take all reasonable precautions to prevent the escape of that fire. So if an individual is burning after 6 p.m., they would be compliant with one section of that code, but if that fire would get away and it was discovered that not all reasonable precautions were taken to prevent that escape, then they would still be in violation. And so just because someone chooses to kindle a fire after 6 p.m. does not mean it's free and clear from any sort of enforcement.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. In your experience, having this burn ban in place, and like you said, it's been in place for a long time during those months, does it help prevent outdoor fires, wildfires from taking off?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really hard to quantify something that doesn't happen. So it's really hard to quantify the number of wildfires prevented by by rules and prevention efforts and these kind of things. However, what we do know is 99% of the wildfires that occur in Ohio are caused by people. And so therefore, when we have these sort of preventative measures and precautions in place, we can reasonably infer that, if people are following these rules, we're undoubtedly preventing some wildfires from occurring.
Is the other 5% lightning?
Well, it would be 1%. Yeah, about 1%, and that would be
1%.
lightning.
I was not a math major.
Yeah. Now here's something interesting. So here in Ohio, we have nearly all fires are caused by humans, but in other parts of the state, nearly all fires here in Ohio are caused by humans. And the reason why is because we don't have lightning-caused fires is because whenever we have lightning storms, it's accompanied by rain. Whereas in some other parts of the country, in west and the southern part of the United States, lightning causes a tremendous amount of fires just because of the differences in weather that they get. Sometimes, in those parts of the country, there's dry lightning storms.
That makes sense.
Or lightning that's not accompanied by rain.
Okay, so what are the repercussions for violating these burn ban restrictions? And can it vary as well depending on where you're at?
So it's defined in code that a violation of the 6A to 6P burn ban is a M3, misdemeanor 3. That's defined in code. And so an M3 carries a maximum penalty of 60 days in jail and a $500 fine.
Wow.
Whether or not that generally happens, that's up to the local courts. But violation is a misdemeanor 3.
So it's important. Obviously, it's important. There are penalties involved, so this isn't something you can ignore.
Absolutely. And I think one of the reasons for that is because, like we talked about, the vast majority of wildfires are caused by people and escape debris burns. And if you think about here in Ohio, if you have a debris burn, it's probably in close proximity to people or property or high-value structures or homes. So therefore, there's a high potential if that fire gets away, it could cause some serious damage. And so therefore, I think that's commensurate with the penalty.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If our listeners encounter a situation where someone is violating that burn ban, how should they handle that?
I think the best thing to do is if a listener, sees someone in violation of 6A to 6P burn ban, the first contact would be the local fire department, especially if there's any concerns for escape or safety issues or anything like that. Get the local fire department out there to have a look at it, assess the situation, and to help extinguish that fire if necessary.
Is there anything else listeners should know about either Ohio's burn ban or open burning restrictions?
Yeah, absolutely. So this relates to the Ohio EPA rules. So people should understand if they choose to kindle a fire to burn debris or yard waste, we're not only concerned with escape of that fire and actual flame impingement causing damage or injuries. We're also concerned about the generation of the smoke. And the reason why is because if a lot of smoke is generated off of a fire that someone kindles, that individual could be responsible and liable for any damages caused by that smoke. For example, a situation where smoke blows across a roadway and obscures the view of drivers and causes a car accident, the individual who kindled that fire could be held liable. So there's a lot of complexities and a lot of things people have to think about before lighting debris or any kind of yard waste on fire. There's also a lot of different options that people can consider to try to clean up their yards. I mean, instead of burning, people could try things like composting, things like that are a lot safer and more productive for the environment.
Thanks for listening to Protecting What Matters. Cryptocurrency continues to be in the news given the multi-million-dollar collapse in mid-November of the crypto exchange known as FTX. Our Division of Securities Attorney John Christ reminds you that investing in cryptocurrency products can be risky.
And so if you are getting involved into a cryptocurrency investment, you need to be aware that it's oftentimes not based on, the valuation is oftentimes not based on the cash flow being produced, but in reality it's just being based on some appreciation of the price that you hope will happen and may not. So it gets back to, we want people to be aware of the risks of these investments and be aware of what they're getting themselves into before they get into it.
For more information and tips on investing, visit com.ohio.gov/securities.
Thanks for listening to Protecting What Matters from the Ohio Department of Commerce. We are your resource for all safety information for your home or business. Here's a quick safety message reminder from the Ohio State Fire Marshal's office.
So smoke alarms, we want to make sure we're putting those on each level of the house. Each bedroom that you're at, where anybody sleeps, put that inside that bedroom, and then outside where the people sleep. They're important because what you typically have is that early activation, early notification of something happening, in this case smoke building up, and that usually is what tells you that there's a fire happening. So having those placed in those locations that are appropriate, making sure that you're checking the alarms themselves about once a month just to make sure that they're working, change the batteries on them, we like to say twice a year right now, and then after 10 years, those entire alarms are going to need replaced.
For more information on the State Fire Marshal, visit our website at com.ohio.gov/fire. And be sure to check out some of our previous podcast episodes on all podcast platforms. Welcome back to Protecting What Matters. I'm your host, Andy Ellinger, and today we've been discussing the burn ban with Aaron Kloss, the program administrator for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry. And now we're going to talk about outdoor fire safety in general. Spring is in full swing, and with the warmer weather comes the desire to spend more time outdoors, whether you're camping, grilling, or simply enjoying a bonfire with friends and family. It's important to keep outdoor fire safety top of mind. Aaron, what are the most common causes of outdoor fires, and how can they be avoided?
Okay, well, here in Ohio, the most common cause of wildfires is escape debris burning. And so therefore we have our 6A to 6P burn ban in place to help try to prevent some of those. And people need to be aware of that and take extra precautions if they choose to clean up their yard waste by burning it during legal hours.
When it comes to fire safety, what measures can be taken to prevent fires when in the outdoors, either camping, grilling, whatever they're doing?
Okay, so when we're doing our recreational activities here in Ohio, first we'll start with campfires. So if an individual chooses to have a campfire, it's a great activity in the spring and summertime. We got to make sure that we have a good ring around the campfire that's made of non-combustible material like concrete or rocks or a steel ring around there. In addition to that, we got to make sure that dry leaves and vegetation is swept away from that ring. It's really easy for a campfire to pop or embers to fall out, so we got to make sure flammable vegetation is pushed away from that campfire ring. And then when we're grilling, if we're grilling using a charcoal grill, we have to make sure that the embers or the coals are completely cool before we choose to dump those out. If we do dump those out, we're going to want to make sure that we have tools on hand and water to make sure we can cool those off 100% so all the heat's out of there.
Can you walk us through the steps you would take to properly extinguish an outdoor fire?
So if we're dealing with a campfire, step one in extinguishment is to finish eating all your s'mores and make sure there's no leftovers. And then following that, we have to make sure that we have tools on hand like shovels or rakes, and then we have to have an abundant source of water there. So when we extinguish a campfire, we're going to want to douse it with water, stir it all up, douse with water again, stir again. And that's really important because we have to make sure that we turn all the coals over in that fire, make sure we get water penetrating all that heat and all that wood that's left in there and all the embers. So we have to water mix, and then make sure it's cold to the touch before we leave it.
Cold to the touch. I like that. That's good. So what fire safety equipment and supplies do you always recommend folks bring with them when camping or spending time outdoors? And then why are these items important?
If we're close to the house, we want to have a shovel, we want to have water.
Okay.
If we're camping, if we're in a camping situation, it's good to have that stuff too if we're in a developed campsite like Ohio State Park campsite or a private campground in Ohio. If you're backpacking in one of our state forests on one of our backpacking trails, you might not have that stuff. So you're going to want to make sure that you're only using designated campfire rings. That's one of the most important things. Keep a campfire where it's supposed to be in these campgrounds, designated rings. And just make sure that we clear all flammable vegetation away from the area in which we're allowed to have that campfire.
Are there tips for ensuring that all members of your group understand the rules, especially with the young? What kind of advice would you give to young children when they're out and about with this fun camping activity, but we want to keep them as safe as possible?
Absolutely. I'm a big advocate of teaching kids by showing kids and having them help. I have a couple kids at home, and we have frequent campfires in the backyard, and I always allow and encourage the kids, to help build the campfire, to light the campfire, and help take care of it. And that way they understand that there's a lot of fun to be had here, but it's a big responsibility also. And so therefore, I think it's really good to get kids out there and engaged in camping and enjoying campfires, outdoor activities. And I think it's really important for parents and guardians to foster that by getting them involved and teaching them responsible actions while they're doing that kind of stuff.
In your experience, have you ever seen or heard reports back about a preventable outdoor fire that got out of control, and kind of what could they have done differently?
Absolutely. I think the vast majority of wildfires that occur here in Ohio, whether it's from an escape debris burn or a campfire or other kind of cause, it's unintentional for the most part. So I think it just takes a little bit more understanding on the environmental conditions that would lead to high probability of escape fire. And so that would be a warm, dry, windy day. So when we have those conditions, that's when we're going to want to avoid having a campfire, maybe choose a different activity. So I think it just takes a little bit more understanding and just a heightened level of awareness of environmental conditions that can cause a wildfire, and let's avoid kindling a fire during those conditions.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else that I may not have asked that listeners should know about either outdoor fires, grilling, or camping safety?
I think that having a fire, campfire, a grill, anything like that's a wonderful thing to do. And I just think, again, it just takes a little bit more awareness of understanding good environmental conditions and higher hazard environmental conditions that we're dealing with, so we can be as safe as possible.
Is there any kind of initiatives at the Division of Forestry you want to mention today, or anything else that I may have missed that you'd like to touch on?
Hey, the thing that I really want to mention is, Division of Forestry works hard on community safety and trying to help people understand outdoor burning safety and regulations and so forth. But the people that are working the hardest here in the state of Ohio are the men and women that work for our local fire departments. They're out there protecting their communities, promoting safety, doing everything they can to keep families safe. And so therefore, I really think it's everybody's responsibility. Like Smokey Bear says, only you can prevent wildfires. We all can play an active role in keeping our communities safe just by having that awareness of how we can be safe, why we need to be safe, and when we need to take these precautions. And so therefore, let's help our fire departments here in Ohio by doing our part and learning about this stuff and implementing it and being safe.
That's great. I would like to thank Aaron Kloss, Program Administrator for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry, for joining me today. Thank you very much for your time today on this critically important issue.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andy. I really appreciate it.
The burn ban is in place to protect Ohioans' property, environment, and even their lives. Remember, outdoor fires can quickly turn dangerous if not properly managed. So whether you're roasting marshmallows or flipping burgers, make sure to keep safety top of mind. You can learn more at the fire prevention section of our website at com.ohio.gov/fire safety. For more information on ODNR's Division of Forestry, visit forestry.ohiodnr.gov.